You think you know people, but what if I told you most of what you see is a mask? And the ones who wear it best often don't even know they're hiding, not from you, from themselves. This isn't a video about others. This is about what you've been missing in plain sight, about them and about you. You've been taught to trust what people say, to value words as truth. But Nietzsche knew better. He knew that the truth isn't in the language, it's in the discomfort beneath it. You felt it, that sense that something isn't right, even when someone's words sound perfect. This isn't intuition, it's recognition. Your body has always known what your mind was trained to ignore. Because people leave clues, they leak tension, they reveal themselves in the cracks between their sentences. The only reason you don't see it yet is because no one taught you how to look. But once you start paying attention, really paying attention, you'll see that every smile has a context. Every "I'm fine" has a weight, and every performance has a backstage. This isn't magic, it's pattern recognition. And when you learn to see people this way, you'll realize something deeper. That understanding others isn't just about decoding them, it's about finally waking up to yourself. From childhood, we're trained to speak in ways that protect us, to avoid punishment, to get approval, to stay safe. So most people don't speak from truth, they speak from fear, from ego, from habit. Nietzsche saw this clearly. He knew that when someone talks, they're not just communicating ideas, they're revealing their psychological survival strategy, the kind one builds after years of rejection, shame, and invisible pain. That means when someone's overly polite, they might not be kind, they might be terrified of conflict. When someone seems confident, it might not be confidence, it might be fear dressed in control. And when someone's too quiet, it might not be peace, it might be exhaustion from masking for too long. So if you want to understand someone, don't just listen to what they say. Listen to why they're saying it. Beneath every sentence, there's a story, and it rarely starts with truth. It starts with protection. Everyone wears a mask, not because they're fake, but because at some point life taught them to protect themselves. Nietzsche never condemned this. He warned us not to confuse the mask for the person. Behind politeness, there's often fear of rejection. Behind humor, there's often a fear of being taken seriously. And behind arrogance, there's often a fear of being insignificant. These aren't flaws, they're shields, crafted through years of quiet battles and invisible wounds. But masks slip, and when they do, you see something real: tension, hesitation, or overcorrection. That's the truth trying to surface. Most people aren't hiding from you, they're hiding from themselves. And if you know how to spot the moment the mask cracks, you're no longer fooled by performance. You start seeing people, not as they present themselves, but as they truly are. This is one of Nietzsche's sharpest psychological insights: projection. People reveal more about themselves in what they judge than in what they praise. Because when someone hates something, it's often because it reflects a part of themselves they're trying to suppress. The man who mocks ambition might be ashamed of his own lack of drive. The woman who criticizes confidence might be starving for self-worth. What we hate in others is often what we've been trained to reject in ourselves. This doesn't mean all criticism is projection, but repeated, emotional judgment usually is. It's not about them, it's about what the critic cannot face in their own reflection. So when someone reacts strongly to something seemingly harmless, don't get defensive, get curious. Ask yourself, what part of them is this really about? Nietzsche distrusted language, not because it's useless, but because it's often used to distract, to deflect, to protect. He believed that silence, not speech, is where truth often hides. When someone hesitates before answering, that pause is loaded. When they change the subject too quickly, that's a red flag. When they respond with cliches or rehearsed lines, they're not being dishonest, they're being defensive. Silence is a map. It shows you where the discomfort lives, where the mask is slipping, and where the real person is trying not to be seen. But most people ignore these signals. They chase clarity in words, when the truth is buried in avoidance. Start paying attention to what's not said, because when words stop, the body starts talking. And if you can hear it, you'll never be misled again. You've seen them, the ones always preaching, always correcting, always eager to appear better. On the surface, it looks like morality, but Nietzsche called it out for what it often is: disguised vanity. There's a difference between genuine virtue and public performance. True integrity is quiet. It doesn't need applause. But when someone constantly signals their values, when they speak louder than necessary about how good they are, it's rarely about truth. It's about image. The louder the righteousness, the more likely it's hiding something: a sense of superiority, a hunger for control, an inner insecurity that needs external validation. What they present as ethics is often ego in costume. So don't be fooled by the volume of virtue. Real goodness doesn't advertise, it acts. And when someone's morals become a spectacle, look closer. You'll see the cracks beneath the purity.
This one changes everything. The lies you hear, "I'm fine," "I don't care," "I'm over it," they're not personal attacks. They're not even conscious manipulations. They're self-preservation, self-deception. People rehearse these lies for years until they believe them, because accepting the truth would mean facing pain they're not ready for. So they construct narratives that make survival easier, even if those narratives aren't real. Nietzsche didn't see this as evil. He saw it as a fragile form of resilience. But once you understand this, you stop taking things at face value. You stop feeling betrayed by inconsistency. Because now you know, people aren't trying to deceive you, they're trying to protect themselves. And the inconsistencies, the contradictions, that's where the truth begins to leak through. The truth they can't face, but also can't hide forever. The person who constantly reminds you of their status, their success, their intelligence, they're not trying to impress you. They're trying to outrun something. Nietzsche believed superiority is rarely strength, it's overcompensation. The need to dominate, to control, to be seen as above others usually comes from a deep, unspoken inferiority. The crown is often hiding the scared child underneath, the one who never felt enough, so they built a throne just to feel tall. Real confidence doesn't shout, it doesn't compare, it doesn't degrade. It just is. So when someone needs to remind you how important they are, it's not power, it's panic. Instead of feeling small around them, see through it. Because once you do, their arrogance stops being threatening and starts being transparent. This isn't about calling people out. It's not about labeling them or feeling smarter. Nietzsche didn't want you to become a judge. He wanted you to become awake. Reading people is about reducing the confusion, about seeing through the fog of performance and finally recognizing the human being behind the armor. The moment you do, something shifts. Your resentment fades, your patience grows, your anger softens. Why? Because now you're not reacting to the mask, you're responding to the wound behind it. That's what Nietzsche wanted, not control, connection. Real, raw, honest connection that only happens when you stop being fooled by appearances. When you see people clearly, you don't become colder, you become unshakable. Because judgment is weakness in disguise, but clarity, that's power and compassion at once. Why does someone over-explain? Why do they say yes when they mean no? Why do they disappear when things get close or dominate when things feel uncertain? Fear. Always fear. Fear of abandonment, fear of judgment, fear of being seen and not accepted. Nietzsche believed humans rarely act from pure desire.
We act to avoid loss of love, status, self-worth. So the next time someone behaves in a way that confuses you, stop asking, what do they want? Start asking, what are they afraid of losing? Because that's where their real story lives. That's where their patterns are born. And when you see fear, not as weakness, but as the root, you start seeing people not as unpredictable, but as deeply human. When someone can't stop criticizing others, they're not revealing your flaws. They're revealing their wounds. Nietzsche saw criticism not as observation, but as confession. Because what someone fixates on in others is often what they can't accept in themselves. The man who mocks sensitivity might be terrified of his own vulnerability. The woman who attacks confidence might be mourning her own abandoned self-worth. Harsh words are often camouflage, covering parts of themselves they've disowned. That's why projection is so powerful to observe. It bypasses what's said and shows you what's unresolved. The pain, the envy, the shame, it always finds a voice, but it speaks sideways, through judgment. So next time someone lashes out, don't absorb it, read it, not as a threat, but as a glimpse into a soul trying to cope without saying so. You've seen the type, always composed, always in control, always certain. But look closer. You'll see the tight jaw, the rehearsed tone, the tension they can't quite hide. Nietzsche understood this kind of confidence. It's not real, it's armor. When someone performs certainty non-stop, it's not because they're grounded, it's because they're terrified. Of being wrong, of being seen, of being revealed as less than they portray. Behind the show, there's often guilt, regret, or a broken version of self they're trying to erase. This isn't to shame them, it's to understand. Because real peace doesn't need to convince. It doesn't compete, it just exists. So when someone intimidates you with how sure they are, pause. Beneath that display may be the softest truth they've never dared to say out loud. When someone says, "I never care what people think," or "I'm always happy," pause. Not because they're lying, but because they're leaking. Nietzsche would tell you, extremes always signal imbalance. Exaggeration is often the ego drowning in doubt. It tries to shout so loudly that no one, including themselves, questions the underlying fear. But the louder the statement, the shakier the truth behind it. You don't need to challenge their words, just understand their purpose. They're not declaring reality, they're protecting against it. There always is a shield, there never is a mask. And what they're really saying is, I don't feel safe. Read the volume. It will always tell you what someone's trying hardest to silence. People who micromanage every detail, who can't tolerate spontaneity, who dominate others just to feel secure, they're not powerful, they're panicking. Nietzsche saw this. Control is the external symptom of internal disarray. When your inner world feels unstable, you try to overmanage your outer world to compensate. It's not strength, it's fear, dressed up as discipline. So when someone is obsessed with structure, order, domination, it's not because they have it all figured out. It's because letting go would expose the chaos inside. And to them, that's unbearable. See beyond the control, not to excuse behavior, but to understand it. Because sometimes the most intimidating person in the room is just the one most afraid of crumbling. The loudest person in the room, the most curated Instagram feed, the one who needs to be noticed, validated, praised constantly. Nietzsche didn't see these as examples of power. He saw them as whispers of desperation. When someone performs for the world, it's because they fear they won't be seen if they don't. And so they overcompensate, with drama, with perfection, with noise. Not because they're full, but because they feel empty. True selfhood doesn't seek attention. It doesn't demand the spotlight. It knows it exists, even in silence. So when someone's always performing, don't be fooled by the sparkle. Look past the show. You'll see someone not trying to impress you,
but begging not to disappear. There's a brutal truth most people can't admit. They don't always hate you because you're wrong. Sometimes they hate you because you're right and free. Nietzsche saw this clearly. He wrote that those who cannot become, destroy. Envy is not loud. It's quiet, disguised as sarcasm, criticism, mockery. When someone attacks your confidence, your success, your peace, they're not always disgusted. They're haunted. Because seeing someone embody what they've abandoned or never believed they could have, that stings. It reminds them of the freedom they never claimed, the life they never chose. And so they try to bring you down instead of rising themselves. So when you feel hated for no reason, don't retaliate. Don't shrink. Just know you triggered something buried. And that's not weakness. That's power. You think people act from values, from reason, from maturity. But Nietzsche would challenge that. He'd say, people don't act, they reenact. A man who was never heard becomes someone who talks over others. A woman who had to be perfect to receive love becomes someone who exhausts herself chasing approval. The adult you're facing is often a child still negotiating the terms of survival. So if you want to truly read someone, don't ask what they believe. Ask who they had to become to be loved. That's not judgment, that's recognition. Because behavior isn't just personality, it's biography. And what you see on the surface is often a survival script written decades ago. You don't need to guess what someone fears. They'll show you, over and over again. The one who disappears when things get real. The one who chases chaos just to feel alive. The one who can't stop pleasing, performing, apologizing. These aren't quirks, they're patterns. And patterns are confessions. Nietzsche knew words can lie, but patterns never do. People may not know how to say, I'm scared of being abandoned, but they'll ghost you. They may never admit, I don't think I'm worthy, but they'll sabotage what matters. And if you learn to listen to the behavior, not the noise, you'll see it. Not to judge, not to fix, but to finally understand. Because once you understand someone's pattern, you don't fall for the mask. You don't take it personally. You don't get pulled into their confusion. You see the child behind the chaos, and you choose grace over reaction. Ever shared a deep thought and felt someone laugh it off? Ever been told you're too intense or too serious when you're just being real? That's not your flaw. That's their fear. Nietzsche understood that depth threatens the shallow. When someone has avoided their own inner world for years, your clarity exposes what they've refused to face. Your truth feels like an attack, not because you're cruel, but because they're unprepared. Don't dim for them. Don't pretend to be light when you were built for depth. If your presence makes someone uncomfortable, it's likely because it reflects the part of them they buried. Let them laugh. Let them dismiss. You're not here to entertain. You're here to awaken. You made it through all 20 truths. That means something. It means you're not like the rest. You're not just looking for tricks to manipulate people. You're looking to see them as they are, and through them to understand yourself. Nietzsche didn't hand us these truths to give us control. He gave them so we could wake up, so we'd stop reacting to people's masks, so we'd stop falling for surface, so we'd finally realize most people are in pain and hiding. And once you see that, you don't become colder, you become sharper. You stop trying to be liked. You start moving with intention. You stop defending your truth. You start living it. This is the end of the video, but the beginning of your vision. From here on out, the world will look different. Louder voices will sound weaker. Polished smiles will seem hollow. But the real ones, the raw, the wounded, the warriors in silence, you'll see them. You'll respect them,
and you'll walk among them without fear.